All right, gang, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves started up. So again, if you missed my morning introduction, my name is Matt Smith. I'm the Commercial Crop Production Extension Agent for Lake and Orange County. So as I like to say, in Orange County, I cover citrus, and in Lake County, if you're growing it commercially and you can eat it, drink it, or smoke it, I'm the person you talk to. So today we're going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart, which is the legal system. Before I did this job, I worked at a criminal law firm for like 5 years. So whenever new regulations pop up, I, for some reason, enjoy reading about it and then teaching folks about them, which is how I have kind of become the extension evangelist for something that has already happened. So let me ask you, first off, show of hands, how many of y'all were aware that parts of the pesticide label were already online? Very good. Got a few of you. Got a lot of hands I didn't see raised up. I am glad you are here today, because that section of the label that is online is not the labeling, the brochure, that is the label. And if you've been to any extension event in your career, you know that the label is the law. Heck yeah, y'all pay attention. Gold star. All right, so yes, part of the pesticide label is currently online. Right now, there are products out there that have this language on there. So how did we get here to this moment? Well, once again, this is America. We got here through the legal system. So the first thing to understand is that there are two laws in this country. FIFRA, that is the law that gives the EPA the right to regulate pesticides. Then there is the Endangered Species Act. That protects all the endangered little critters that we love so much. These laws do not supersede each other. FIFRA does not supersede ESA. FIFRA has to respect ESA and vice versa. These laws are considered equal. There were several lawsuits that challenged that essentially said, EPA, you have not been fully respecting the Endangered Species Act when you were setting up your pesticide registration framework. So essentially, the lawsuit said, hey, these rules were already on the book, and for the past 20, 30 odd years, y'all have not been following this. This went to multiple courts in multiple different districts around the U.S., liberal and conservative. And they all ruled that, yes, based on the terms of these laws, EPA has not been fully respecting ESA. Once they found that out, what then the courts ruled is that you've not been following this, you don't get 20 years to correct this. You have to start correcting this immediately. Well, EPA came back and said, listen, based on the current way that we do things, by 2030, we think we could only revise 5% of the labels into compliance. That's untenable. The courts are not going to allow you to do that. They're going to say, well, you find a way to make it work. And what they have come up with is this new system. So how do we correct for this issue? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify pesticides that we know affect either endangered species directly or indirectly. And this is one of the areas that they had found that they really were not in compliance. If you have something like the endangered ridge tree shrew or something, yeah, there's already language that protects against that. But what if that tree shrew eats, let's say it's a vegetarian tree shrew, and it eats a certain kind of plant? Well, if you spray something that kills that plant, you've killed that food source, and now you have indirectly affected that organism. And so we got to figure out a way to correct for this and protect not only endangered species themselves, but their habitats and their food sources. We're going to focus them primarily on drift and erosion control. This actually helps us out a lot here in Florida. None of these regulations have anything to do with leaching. So your sandy soil is not going to count against you. Actually, you're going to see later on in the presentation, it's actually going to help you out. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify what we call pesticide use limitation areas, or PULAs, which sounds really funny to say, but as I'm going to say for the rest of the presentations to get the giggles out now. These are going to be areas where we identify either those endangered species or their habitats. And we're going to say, okay, if you are spraying in these pesticide use limitation areas, that is where we are going to focus on the additional language and regulatory steps that you need to spray pesticides in that area. So pesticide labels, any new pesticide label that's coming out right now, they are going to get new Endangered Species Act language on them when they're either first registered or they're being reviewed for re-registration. Parts of the label are now online, and I'm going to show you how to access those parts. So essentially, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. We're going to go step by step here. So parts of the label are online, or they require further record keeping or mitigation points. And we'll talk about what those mitigation points are, but essentially, just as a preview, these are points that you earn for either the structure of your farm or practices that you already have in place will earn you points. There are pesticides on the market right now and pesticides coming out on the market where if your farm doesn't have enough points, you can't spray it. And that doesn't matter where you are, if you're in a pesticide use limitation area or not. So we're going to talk first about the parts of the label that are online. So EPA has developed a system called Bulletins Live 2. I do not know what happened to Bulletins Live 1. I've yet to be able to get a straight answer on that. But Bulletins Live 2, aka BLT, aka a most tedious sandwich. So the label is going to tell you if you need to look at Bulletins Live 2. So you'll check the environmental hazard sections where it usually is, sometimes directions for use. There'll be a section that's called like endangered species information. There's no hard set rule about where you have to put that on the label, but I usually see it in these areas. But that's going to be a little tedious for you going forward because you're going to need to be checking the labels, which you're already doing that, right? Anytime you buy a product, you're all reading the label every time? Yeah, good. Head's nodding. That's what I want to say. So when you go onto that system, you're going to need to have handy your farm location, the month you expect to apply that product in, and you can do that up to 6 months out, and the EPA registration number for all products. So if you already have, over the years, you have a good sense of, in April, I usually spray this. In October, I usually spray this. You can print out the documentation for that 6 months in advance. You want to do that because this is online. This stuff can change at the drop of a hat. But if you have a bulletin that says these are the regulations for October, I print them out now, and in September they change something, you don't have to worry about that change. You follow what was on that bulletin that you printed out for October. Now, when you get to November, you're probably going to have to change things up. But it gives you a bit of a buffer zone to see, okay, there's been changes to the label online now. I'm going to have to potentially change what I'm doing. You don't want to be trying to do this the day before you spray and find out that you're actually limited spraying during that time period. So if you are in a pesticide use limitation area and there is more restrictions on the online site, then don't worry, I'm going to show you what this all looks like. Then you will print that bulletin and save it for your records. If that product doesn't have any limitations, print that bulletin anyway. That one, covers your butt during that 6 months time period. And two, you'll actually gain a mitigation point for doing that down the line. So even if you're not in a pesticide use limitation area, if you're doing this on the regular, you can get that extra mitigation point. But again, this is what it would look like on the label. So this is environmental hazards section, and then we have right below our non-ag requirements, endangered species protection requirements. And it's just saying on there, yada, 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 federal offenses. When using this product, you must follow the measures contained in the Endangered Species Protection Bulletin for the area which you're applying the products. You must obtain a bulletin no earlier than 6 months prior to using this product. To obtain bulletins, consult this website, call this number, or email the EPA. You must use the bulletin valid for the month in which you apply the product. So remember, this is straight up on the printed label. That is the law. Going to that website is the law. And if there's additional regulations on the website, that is part of the label. That is the law. And again, there are products already on the market right now with this language. This has already happened. So if you weren't aware of this, when you get back to the farm, start looking at your labels. So when you do print out a bulletin, it's going to look like this. So you'll have, and this is with the farm location right here, and this little red area, that is the borderline of that pesticide use limitation area. So in this case, I'd only put in one product. So you have our map here showing where the site is. Then you have the products. And then down here, you have the limitations for that product. So let's give it a go. So let's see what this would look like if you were actually looking this up. So the first thing you're going to do, honestly, you're going to go to Google. This is going to be the fastest way to do this. Websites change. Google is eternal. So I just did a search for EPA Bulletins Live 2 website. It's first one on there. View the bulletins. So once you click on that, that is going to take you to the Bulletins Live 2 site. Now there's a few ways that you can tackle this. So on this, we have our section here to put in our location, our application month, and our EPA registration numbers. But first, we're going to do what we used to be able to do pretty easily, and that is just zoom in on the map. So if we zoom in here to Florida, we can now see our nice little state. But you see these sections in here that are red, so like right here on the Panhandle, it's kind of hard to see from further back, but the entire coastline, Everglades area, and oh yeah, the ridge. Anywhere that is in red there is a pesticide use limitation area, which means there are products in the market right now that have additional limitations. And if you are farming in that area, you got to know about that and you got to follow the directions. So let's zoom in a little closer and let's actually click on that red with our mouse. I'm going to tell you right now, don't try to do this on your cell phone. It's not ready yet. You're going to want an actual computer. I know they're working on more web-friendly stuff, but right now, get a laptop. Use your desktop. So if I zoom in and I click on it, two things have happened here. So one, actually, this button up here, printable bulletin, it's turned from red to green, which means I could actually print a bulletin. We're not going to do that yet, though. Let's focus on this section on the left over here. These are all of the products in the ridge right now that have additional regulations on them. And if you scroll down to the bottom of these, there's a little button there that says full details. So if I click on that, it is going to give me a list here of all the products in that area and all the additional details on them. This is fine for reference. This does no good for your records. This is not the bulletin. This is just a little preview. You can think of it that way. So if we minimize that and we go back to our printable bulletin button, again, having selected this area in here, we click that and we print up the actual bulletin for the Mid-Florida Ridge. And it looks like this. It's a lot of products right now. When this first started out about a year and a half or so ago, there were only a handful on there. And at that time, it was easy enough to just click on the ridge and know what you had and look through and see, okay, yeah, this product is something I have, or this one I don't, this one I don't. But now it's not. Now at this point, in many areas, clicking the map is pretty much unusable. It's not going to work out. It's just too much information. So to best use this system, you need to actually use it the way it was created. And that is to actually select for your particular area and the products that you are applying. Put those in for that month. So I'll show you how to do that. So to start off, let's take an example farm, one that I just made up. We'll call it Smithfield Farms. And this location doesn't exist anymore. This is actually a shopping center now, unfortunately. But this is State Road 50 in Claremont back in, I think, 2004, when there still weren't traffic lights, pretty much. So this is my farm location. So I got that in mind now. And then we're going to pick our application month. Remember, I can go out 6 months in advance. 6 months from now, I can already do October. So in this case, my application month, October 2026. And then I need to look at my label, and as well, I just pulled this one at random from the list of products that I already knew had limitations in the ridge. So in this case, Drexel Malathion EC, I need to find my EPA registration number. So 19713-217. The following so far? Alrighty. So now we are going to put this into the system. So we've added our address, we've added our application month, and then what I've done here is I've added the EPA registration number. Whenever you add that number on there, it is going to populate it into that section. So this essentially, it will search for what is currently in that list, and it will pull it up on a drop-down menu. So you'll put in their registration number, the product will pop up, you'll click on it. If you have multiple products, you'll just keep adding them in there. I think it's pretty much unlimited how many you can put in there right now. There's a limit, I haven't hit it yet. So you'll put all those on there, and then you're gonna get really frustrated because this is not gonna turn green because there is no button on here that says apply or done adding. And this annoyed the heck out of me the first time. What you actually have to do now is once you put everything in there, you need to click on that red section there. There's the pesticide use limitation area. When you click on that, it will apply all the filters, and then this button will turn green. It's very frustrating at first before I figured that one out. So now you know, you can avoid this pitfall. So you click on that, the button turns green. When I click on the button, now I'm going to get that actual bulletin. So again, we have my farm located right in here. And you can see where the current Dunkin' Donuts is now. So this section, and so I've been asked this question before, what if that pesticide use limitation area bisects my property? If it bisects any section of your farm that you consider a block, you treat that whole block according to that label. If it falls outside of it completely, and that is a whole separate block, you treat that one different, it's in your records as a separate block, then you wouldn't have to follow it. That block's not in the pesticide use limitation area. As long as the required spray drift buffer zones don't overlap into that pesticide use limitation area. So it can get a little tricky on the edge there. But in this case, Smithfield Farms is well within there. We treat it all as a single block. So this is our limitations. So if I zoom in, so again, this is where the farm location is the products I put in, and then these are the additional limitations. So I'll zoom in so you can see what this looks like. So this is our limitations. So we can follow one of these measures. This is a malathion product. So we can either apply it only before dawn or after dusk. But if you're not feeling like farming on the moon, we got some more options for you. You apply only when the wind is blowing away from Florida scrub and sandhill habitats, or if the wind is blowing toward, because you can't control the wind, and if it's, if you got pest pressure, you got to spray. Third, you use a 50-foot ground buffer from Florida scrub habitat and sandhill habitats, and an aerial buffer from Florida scrub and sandhill habitats according to the application rate. Depending on the amount of active ingredient per acre, it's giving you different buffer zones. Now you can reduce that with straight drift buffer calculations later on. We're not going to actually go too much into that because we're kind of going to be a little pressed for time, but we'll go over that a lot more at our workshop in May. So it's going to give you those limitations. It's going to say, buffer sizes can be reduced by 50 feet for aerial application rates, if you do a couple other things. And then is going to help define for you what that habitat is. So it will define scrub for you. Just because you are in that pesticide use limitation area doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to have to follow all these if you are not, if there's no scrub around you. If there's no scrub habitat surrounding you, if Smithfield Farms is there, but it's set in modern day, so to my left and right and north and south, I've got a Dunkin' Donuts and a Costco, stuff like that. That's not Florida scrub habitat anymore. So I've got this information, I said it for my records, but I'm not dealing with scrub habitat anymore. So I have to have this, but it doesn't necessarily apply to me. So, but they do actually a pretty good job on the website and even on the bulletins of defining for you what it is you got to look out for. If they say you can't apply it next to, scrub habitat, they will define what scrub habitat looks like for you. Record keeping, near and dear to my heart. This is going to be part of your record keeping from now on. So these are part of your regular WPS pesticide record keeping requirements. So remember, you're on WPS if you're spraying pesticides and it's an active farm. If that product label has an agricultural use section on it, covered by WPS. So you're going to keep those bulletins with your records for at least that minimum 2 years, unless that pesticide label or some other kind of source, so any applicable federal, state, or local laws require more. If Bulletin's Live 2 at some point says that you need to keep the records for longer, then you got to follow that, because Bulletin's Live 2 is part of the label, and the label is the thank you. Good audience participation today. So, what if you are not in a pesticide use limitation area? Well, if you pull it up on the website, all you'll have to do is put in your address and that application month. If you are not in a PULA, this light's already going to turn green for you. This is actually the Lake County Extension Office. So we are not currently in a pesticide use limitation area. That can change. They can always update these, and they don't gotta tell you about it. You should be always checking the label and checking Bulletin's Live 2. So you'll print the bulletin and you'll save that for your records. Again, if, this is, say I printed it out for October. If between now and October, the Lake County Extension Office all of a sudden becomes inside a pesticide use limitation area, I don't gotta follow any of those new requirements until November, or until the next bulletin that I pull up shows that information. Another important too, and I kind of forgot to touch this on the label section. If you have pesticides in your pesticide locker, your pesticide storage room right now, let's say that the newest version of that product, that label, has endangered species information on it. Do you need to utilize that if your current label does not? And the answer is no. You follow the label on the product you are applying. So if I am applying that malathion product and right now that label doesn't have ESA information on it, I don't worry about this. But the next time I buy that product, if it does have the information on it, then I got to follow this. You are following the label on the product you are using. So, again, if the property is added to a PULA between now and October, you still follow the bulletin printed now. And the language will actually say, right now, there's no pesticide use limitations within the printed map view for this area for this product. Another important thing to keep in mind, some of this pesticide use limitation stuff is seasonal. So it may be that if I print this out for, July, there may not be any limitations on that product. But if that endangered species is particularly maybe active in October, maybe that's breeding season or nesting season, there could be limitations for October that weren't in July. This is why, again, it's always important. You need to be checking this stuff regularly whenever you buy this product and whenever you're going to be applying that product. Either if I'm going to be applying it tomorrow, it's the first time that I've used this product, or if I know I'm going to apply it 6 months in advance, because this stuff can change. That's kind of it's difficult, but it's one of the benefits of this system, because the alternative would be to have either a pesticide label that is 150 pages long, that would be down to individual sections of a state, sections of a county, changing month by month, or you look it up online. So this is a way to kind of ensure that we can still use these products so it's not banned for a state if it only affects critters in the ridge certain months of the year. So how are we going to do this practically? But the first things first, when you go back to the farm, go ahead and review your pesticide inventory. Check for that Endangered Species Act language. You may already have ESA worded products. They have already gone through the reporting period and signed off on all the language to start applying this to insecticides and to herbicides. Fungicides are next. So we don't have that language on there yet, but it is coming. But right now, insecticides and herbicides, it is already approved to start using this language. So every time you buy a pesticide, again, especially if it's an herbicide or an insecticide, read that label. Again, shouldn't be anything new because you are always doing that because you're really, really good. If the ESA language is found, check Bulletin's Live 2 as instructed, and then print out that bulletin for your records. You follow those restrictions if your farm is in a pesticide use limitation act area, and that bulletin gives you any additional instructions. So again, just because you're in a PULA or PULA doesn't necessarily mean that every product's going to have extra requirements. It just means I need to be a lot more wary about what I'm purchasing and making sure I'm checking that label. Again, if you have any products that you use regularly and you can predict when you'll use them, print the bulletins for all of them 6 months out. And if you're not sure if you'll need it that month, but you might, shoot, you can just go ahead and do your whole inventory every month. You're going to need to assign this to somebody who's comfortable with using web tools, because there's no other real way to do this. You're going to have to get online. And it is not considered an excuse if you don't have reliable internet where you are. That's just the way they're having to do this now. Any questions so far on pesticide use limitation areas, Bulletins Live 2? Charles. Exactly. So the question is like, yeah, if I needed to surprise, I have an insect that I didn't treat for before, I need a special product for it, and I needed to, it's April, so let's say I need to spray it next week. Well, if I am in a pesticide use limitation area and it has that ESA language on it, then I am going to need to go to Bulletins Live 2, put in the spray month for April, and see if there's any extra regulations. And if there are, I have to follow those. And if those regulations say I can't spray that product in April, I can't spray that product in April. Flat out. So you may have to do a little research, further research whenever you're buying a new product to make sure it's one that you can still actually apply, during that particular week. Good question. Right. So if you are not in the PULA, it's business as usual. With two caveats. One, you could be added to a PULA at any time. There's no set schedule of every 6 months we update the PULAs. It could be at any moment. So you need to be checking it. Also, if you are still printing out these bulletins, even if they don't cover you yet, you do gain an additional bonus mitigation point. And that can help you out if you're right on the edge of being allowed to spray a certain product or not. And that's our whole next section. Good. Al. I mean, you would, but that's on. So the question is, from a legal CYA stance, is the benefit whenever you print this out that it's got a timestamp on there? Maybe a little, but that's honestly not too much of an issue with this, because the real thing they're going to be looking at is, okay, did I apply pesticides in this month? And did my bulletin have this list language for this month? And the bulletin will list the month for which it is applicable. So it doesn't matter when you print that out. As long as you have that bulletin, you should be good. Because the system won't let you go back or go forward. Right now, it only shows you April through October. I can't put in anything for March right now if I'm trying to, cover my butt for something that I applied in March. Any other questions? Pre-con time. Alrighty. So now we are going to go into mitigation points. This part is not necessarily online, but it can be. This is important to know because this applies to everybody. This has nothing to do with where you are spraying, but what you are spraying. It's not dependent on being in a Pesticide Use Limitation Act. So the label is going to give you a certain number of mitigation points that you need to have. And if you don't have that many points on your farm, you cannot spray that product unless you take steps to earn more points. So before you spray anything, and they say, at the beginning of the season or beginning of the year, you need to access the EPA mitigation menu website and either download or use the mitigation point calculator, or use what's called the Palm tool, which is a web-based system, and it's a lot more mobile friendly. So the mitigation points calculator, it is a macro-enabled Excel spreadsheet. Macros are mini programs that exist on the Excel spreadsheet that will make things a little easier to use. So you can click a button and it'll automatically clear all the forms. You can click a button and it will duplicate the sheets. Most computers will make you click a button that enables those macros because, especially in the past, it was a pretty easy way to apply a virus to someone's computer. But if you're getting it from this website, I'm not going to be worried about that. But just so you know, if you're trying to utilize the Excel spreadsheet, make sure you enable macros on there. And it'll give you a warning the first time you open it up and say, this has macros on it. Do you trust this document? Click yes, and you'll be able to use it to its fullness. It is not particularly difficult in Florida to get mitigation points. I'm going to show you the process for doing it. You need to have it for your records. But just so you know, I tried doing this for what I would consider to be the average Central Florida citrus farm. It's pretty hard to get any less than 12 points, and the max you need for any product right now is 9. So this shouldn't affect you right now unless they start to increase the amount of points that you need. But for right now, this should just be something you have to worry about mostly once a year. So yeah, 3 points for being in most Florida counties, just for existing, and 1 for actually doing Bulletins Live 2. So if you can show in your records that you consistently use Bulletins Live 2, you get a mitigation point. So right off the bat, for following the law and farming in Florida, for the most part, you get 3 points. This is also really based on erosion and runoff and not leaching. Our soils are not very prone for runoff in this area. We got a lot of flat terrain. We got a lot of really sandy terrain. Now, where I'm from originally in Escambia County, and you look at any points, because Escambia County is a lot of clay, it's a lot of elevation, there's a lot of streams and rivers and creeks and bayous all leading to the Gulf of Mexico. So that's like erosion central up there. Here, you're going to be a lot easier dealing with this. So here is a label for our product, Liberty Ultra. For a while, this is the only one that had both Bulletins Live 2 and mitigation points on there. I'm sure there are more out now. But when I first built this presentation about 6 months ago, this is the only one out there. And in this section, mandatory runoff mitigation, it is a long section, and buried in there, right around here or so, right in here, tells you there's 3 mitigation points required. Finding how many you need is going to be kind of a pain in the butt right now, because there's no requirement to put that on like the front of a label. It's going to be somewhere buried in here. You're just going to have to go look for it. Sometimes it's a numeric digit. Sometimes they spell out the word 3. You're just going to have to go looking for it. It's the best I can tell you. Another thing about mitigation points is that if there's also Endangered Species Act wording on there, and you have to go to Bulletins Live 2, the limitation in Bulletins Live 2 may be additional mitigation points. The label may have no mitigation points on there, but BLT says you got to have 3. You follow whatever is the highest number, essentially. So there's a few things on here, and this is pretty tiny, so I actually have it here on my phone so that I can read it too for you, because this is straight off the mitigation menu website. I will say, for as wordy as this is, they actually did a very good job of explaining all this, and there are always links to any terms that you may need definitions for. So the first thing they tell you to do is plan for the growing season / year. So at the field or farm level, when crops are being grown, what pesticide products are expected to be used throughout the entire growing season / year. Right off the bat, because they don't tell you in plain English, this tells you how often you have to do this. They say plan for the growing season / year. That slash means or. Make it easy on yourself. Do it for the year. Don't try to do this spring, summer, fall, winter. You would only have to do this once, because again, this is structurally based on your farm. What is the layout? Do you have any kind of like grass buffer strips? Do you have riparian areas around the farm? Things that don't easily change throughout the year unless you make it happen. That's going to be something that's going to be set. So you really only have to do your mitigation points, calculation for how much your farm has once a year. print it out, put it in the front of your pesticide binder for that year. You're good for inspection. So next thing you're going to do, look at your products that you apply, read through those labels, figure out how many mitigation points you need. Find the product that has the highest number that you need. That's your target. Once you do that, determine which applications need to achieve points. So this is interesting. Based on where you are located, you may not actually need any points because you have already achieved all of them. So there's a few things. So does a treated farm or field have a perimeter berm system? Is there an irrigation tailwater return system? Is this application as a tree injection? Is it a subsurface drip application? Is a treated farm or field or acre less than 1/10 of an acre? If you select yes to any of these, you're done. It's going to go ahead and tell you you've achieved, however many points you need. Print that out. That's your records. You're done. But if you don't select any of these, now you're going to have to go through and you're going to have to figure out, there's going to be different things that will gain you points. And so we'll show you how that looks. As soon as you reach that target amount of points that you need, you're done. You can print it out and you're good to go unless you find a product that for some reason needs more points than you already have. Okay, this is an extra step. It's not as much work as Bulletins Live 2, but remember, this is a requirement for everybody if you are trying to spray any pesticides that have this runoff mitigation language in the label. So, here's what it's going to look like. We'll give this one a go. So in this case, I'm going to do a search on Google for EPA mitigation menu. Right here on the top. Once you go in there, go ahead and bookmark that site. Especially bookmark the Bulletins Live 2 one as well. You'll be going there a lot more often. Once I go in there, here's that page. It's going to give you, two options here, Palm or Excel. Let's do the Palm one first. So this is the web-based system. It's a lot more mobile friendly if you're trying to do this on the fly. So you'd click that, and it's going to take you to this page. So pesticide app for label mitigations. They say app. It's a web-based app. It's just a decision tree. You're just going to click on a few things. So I'll click on that first one there. This one next to it is a spray drip calculator. We're not going to have time much to talk about that today, but that is a way to the computer, the website, to easily tell you, based on what you're doing, how much can you shrink that required spray distance buffer area. And depending on what you're doing, you can actually get that down to 0. So it'll take us here to our runoff/erosion mitigation calculator. So we'll go ahead and click on Get Started. So I'll put in my information. So I put in my farm name, Smithfield Farms. The next two sections here are optional. So you can put in the pesticide information, the name of the product. So in this case, what do we call that? Sedge Murder 3000 or 9000. So I'm going to spray Sedge Murder 9000. This is just for my records at this point. Honestly, I'm not usually going to worry about this one too much because it's really about the farm itself. But in this case, this tool is kind of more for, I'm spraying a particular product and I want to know, does my farm have enough points to spray that product? And then the crop site, again, that's optional. I just put down citrus. So the big thing, though, is definitely have to put in, the name here. This is going to help you out for trying to manage things. So then I'll go on next. So this is a bunch of check marks, and this is one page. I just broken it in half here. Remember earlier I was saying, do you have a tailwater return system? Do you have riparian areas around the farm? If you click any of these check boxes here, then you're going to go ahead to skip to printout. This box is going to come up. You're done. It's going to take you to a page where it'll, you can print it out and you're good to go for that product. But if I click none of these apply, that's going to go away. And now we have to go next. So the next thing I'll do is I will select how many mitigation points that product needs for me to be able to spray it. And in this case, Sedge Murder 9000, it's pretty heavy duty stuff. So it requires 9 mitigation points. 9 is the highest you can go as of right now. There are no products on the market that require more than 9 points. That can change in the future. It is still the case as of when I finish this presentation on Friday. And then we're going to get into some of the decision tree stuff. So do I have any systems that capture runoff and discharge? So do I have a water retention pond? Do I have a sediment control basin? Do I have subsurface tile drainage with a controlled outlet? If I hit any of those, it's going to give me points. But in this case, Smithfield Farms, we don't have any of those. So I'm going to hit not applicable. It's going to keep a running tally here of how many points that I've earned, how many points that I need to spray that product, and it'll tell you, do you have enough? And it's going to stay like this. This will keep going up as I add practices that earn me points. The moment that I hit 9, this will say yes, I'll be able to print out. So right out the bat though, I don't have enough. So I hit not applicable, and I go to the next page. So this is the section where just existing helps you out. So I select my state, we're in Florida. I select my county, Lake County is where we're located. Lake County gets you 3 points. A lot of counties in Florida get you 3 points. Pretty much anything on the ridge is going to get you 3 points. Again, even though you might be on a slope, you've got very well draining soil. And what we're worried about here is runoff. So well draining soil usually does not equate to high runoff risk. Now, maybe if you've been in a drought for several months, the ground's a little more compact, but they're not worried about that right now. So being in Lake County, bam, I get 3 points. We're on our way to 9. We haven't hit that yet. Now we go to our next page on this. First one, mitigation tracking. So are you using the mitigation calculator? The label says you have to use the mitigation calculator some way or another. So you go on here. It gives you a point for not breaking federal law, people. So right off the bat, yeah, I'm not breaking the law. That gives me an additional point. So I was at 4. Next one, are you following recommendations from runoff erosion specialists, or are you participating in a qualified conservation program? So there's a few options there. One's not applicable. 2 is working with their following recommendations from a technical specialist. And 3 is participating in a non-qualified conservation program. There are EPA qualified conservation programs that automatically get you 9. Last I heard, FDACS was working to get BMPs as one of those qualified programs that gets you 9 points. Currently, though, it's non-qualified, but it still applies in this section. Now, Lake County, we're in a BMAP. You already are in FDACS BMPs, which means Smithfield Farms automatically gets 2 points. So 3 points from this page alone, and we're at 6. Okay, here's kind of a fun one. Working with and following recommendations from a technical specialist. Guess who qualifies as a technical specialist? You ever talk to your extension agent? They ever make any recommendations and you follow them? Bam, 2 points. You work with the CCA, they make recommendations, you follow them, bam, 2 points. Should be very easy for y'all to get 3 points from this page alone. We're a couple pages in, we're already at 6. Those products on the market, you were ready to spray at 3. Again, it's a little extra record keeping. It's not hard right now, especially for us in Florida, to get these points. Now we're going to go to our next page. Again, benefits for growing in Central Florida on the ridge. All right, do I have a field with a very narrow slope? And this is what, less than 3%? So in this case, for a lot of y'all here, in Highlands County, Polk County, if you're on flat land, you're going to get points from that. But in my case, Smithfield Farms, we're on a slope. We're in the hilly area of the ridge. It's kind of near Sugarloaf Mountain. So we don't have points from that. But do we have predominantly sandy soils? Oh, yes, we do. So if you have very sandy soils, so less than 10% clay, less than 90%, so more than 90% sand, 3 points. If it's a little bit less, little more silt or clay, little less sand, you're still going to get 2 points. If you're starting to get into a lot more heavier, higher silt counts, higher clay counts, maybe a little gumbo clay in there, you're not going to get any points from this. But Mid-Florida Ridge, we're getting this. So I'm only a couple of pages into this, and I've already hit 9 points. You can see 9 current points, 9's the minimum number we need. We got a checkbox, which means this has now popped up. So we can skip to the field summary, or the final summary. So I'll click on that, And it's going to give me this page. This is my final summary page. We'll print this out. So hit print. We're going to save our printed mitigation points for your records. If you have if you have like an annual binder, put it on the front of that binder. It's good for the whole year. If you're doing it digital, just have it saved somewhere where you can easily find during inspection. And you're good to go on this. At this point, you just keep reading those labels. As long as you have enough mitigation points that you earned from doing this, you can go ahead and spray. If you don't have enough points, you're going to have to add on extra procedures to your farm in order to get those points. We don't have time to go through all of them because there's a bunch, but there are a lot of ways to get points, including doing those Pesticide Use Limitation Act bulletins we talked about earlier. If you're 1 point away and you're doing that, now you got your points. So our second option, remember, that was the web-based system. Our second option is Excel. So finding the Excel spreadsheet, and I'll say, I like the Excel version personally, but I'm an economist, so I just kind of like Excel anyway. There's a few other benefits to it, but they kind of hide this one. So you'll start on the screen here, but you have to scroll down about a few page lengths until you get into this runoff mitigation options. And now that they know that they've hit it for you, they're going to give you the link twice. So these are where they are. So you will click on either of these and you'll download that spreadsheet. You'll enable macros, and it's going to look something like this. And the nice thing about this is, first and foremost, it's going to let you fly right past that Palms 9-point limit. This is where you'll be able to find out the total number of mitigation points that your farm actually has. The Palms website is going to hard stop you there. You can, it'll have a link on there, but if you click on it, it'll show you how you can earn more points, but you would have to manually pull out a calculator and write those up. The spreadsheet's going to do it for you. Each of these is going to have like the requirements. It's going to have a direct link to the definitions. It'll take you right to the EPA website. It takes you right to the definition. So if you have any questions about that, you'll be able to find that answer. And then this section in here is a drop-down menu. So you'd click on that and you would select, if you have it, yes. If not, no. And it will easily let you calculate all this for your farm. And then you can save this document. I like this one, which one is which. First off, they are both legally sufficient right off the bat. So from a legal standpoint, one's not worse than the other. Palms is a lot more mobile friendly, requires no additional paid software. If you don't currently have Excel for using another spreadsheet software, you don't got to buy it, because right now this is just an Excel format. I haven't tried putting it into like an open source spreadsheet. The macros certainly wouldn't work. So I'm not sure how well it would work in that system, but if you want to use the Excel, you got to have Excel. Palm doesn't require that. But Excel, again, it's easy to make changes on there when you have new qualifying farm practices, which would earn you more mitigation points. With the Palms tool, I can't go back and like save it and go back into it. I got to do each thing over each time I want to change something. It's also really easy to renew each year if nothing changes. As long as that form itself hasn't changed, click on the file, copy, paste, renew for that year. Yeah, make sure things haven't changed on there, but otherwise it makes it very easy to make those changes. And again, lets you demonstrate your farm's full point potential. On this one back here, this again was just for what I figured would be like the average farm, citrus farm in Lake County. And I got 17 points. And it wasn't very hard to get that. And that was just based off of whenever I've gone and visited growers and see what they're doing. Yeah, most of them are doing 17 points. Even the ones who are on a slope are getting 17 points. One final thing that we'll touch on is spray drift buffer considerations. So this is not online, but it is a new part of the label. So this is not something you have to look for bulletins live to, nothing to do with mitigation points, but there's a new section on the label. It's going to give you specific buffer distances between the sprayer and that protected area. One of the big things is going to first make you identify, are you spraying downwind of a protected area? So if you have, nothing but Walmarts around you, you're not going to have any spray drift areas. But if you have any wild areas, particularly non-managed ones. So if it's like a constructed wetlands area, it wouldn't count. But if it's a wild wetlands area, you'd have to follow these. Again, part of the printed label, it's not BLT. Everybody does this one. And if you follow guidance on the label, and also there's that drift buffer calculator next to the Palms website, it can help you get that distance even all the way down to 0. So it gives you some options. So the takeaway on this, I told you things were already in play. 355 pesticide products now have a BLT directive on them. There is a BLT tracker the Michigan State University puts out like every week, every other week. It's great. It is an Excel spreadsheet, but it shows every product. And it also is nice. It will identify any products that have been added in the last week will be highlighted in yellow. So you can immediately see has anything been added. If it's your first time looking at it, you can look through all of them. 335 labels already have this language on them. They're already out there. They may already be in your pesticide locker. All new pesticides and renewing pesticides are getting ESA language. Now, the question that I've asked multiple times is, okay, if you're not at that renewal period, let's say something gets, changed tomorrow and a label just went through registration last week, is it going to be 15 years until it gets this language on there? In this litigious country, probably not. They may change that down the line. But even then, one of the things the EPA has done is they have said, pesticide companies, if you want to add this Endangered Species Act, check the BLT's website language to your label, you can do that. And if it is a pesticide that normally needs like a public comment period whenever you are changing the language on it, that does not apply with adding that ESA language on there. If you want to add that, you do not have to go through public comment. Again, as long as that's the only thing that you are changing. So this could change at any moment. Why it's always very nice to be talking with your pesticide reps. They're going to be the people who are most knowledgeable about the changes at those companies. Got a lot here today. Talk to them about it. Because again, this is already happening and it can change very quickly and without warning. BLT and ESA language is the law. If it's on that label, you have to follow it. If it's not on the label of the product, on the jug you are currently putting into that spray can or into that jug, you don't have to. Even if I know that the new labels have this on there, I follow the label on the product I am currently using. This is going to be more record keeping. And I know that's not something you want to hear. I know you already deal with enough. I know especially in the past several years, you dealt with enough. I know Waters of the Americas was even more regulation. It's like, oh God, now I got another one on here. This is a trade-off. This is slightly increased paperwork, and I know that's on top of what you're already doing, but it really is the best way that we were able to figure out how to do this. One, complying with the legal requirements and what the courts have ordered, but making sure that you are still able to spray these products. You should still be able to spray these products if your area does not have endangered species in it, and you should not be banned from having to spray them because somebody 3 counties over is dealing with it. Having this label online is the best way to split that difference and be able to still apply these products, but it is going to take some more work on your part as the grower. You're going to want to have somebody who is assigned to this at your farm. Is going to be the best way to do it. And their job is to track this, keep up with the records, keep up with the spreadsheets, go in every month, the first day of each month, and print out the bulletins for 6 months from now. That's going to be a way to stay in compliance, make it part of your regular routine, and also make sure that you have a solid 6 months to prepare if you see any changes that happen along the line so you don't get caught off guard. Definitely check out this site. It's a way to kind of keep on track with these things. This is my contact info. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions on this stuff. Again, me and Brett Boltmeyer from the Pesticide Information Office have been kind of the evangelists trying to spread the word about this. If this is a lot. I know it's a lot to take in one session. If you want more training on this, we do have a workshop coming up May 19th, 9 to 12 at the Citrus REC in Lake Alfred. There are CEUs available for it, but that's going to be a 3-hour-long session and is designed for interactivity. So bring your laptops. Me and Brett are going to go through this step by step. And just so you know too, it's not just going to be y'all there. In the afternoon, we have an in-service training for extension agents. So Brett and I will also be teaching other extension agents how to do this so that you can call your agents and not just me in the future. I got to focus on my guys. But in the meantime, feel free to call me on any of this stuff.